Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So what went on yesterday in Parliament? The government survived a vote by the narrowest of margins and the Tory party were at each other's throats. What happened, Matt?
It was extraordinary yesterday. We're in this bizarre situation where you need to sort of every 10 minutes work out who are the rebels and who are the loyalists. So we thought that Theresa May had got her Chequers deal, but then the people who were previously loyal to Brexit, David Davis, Boris Johnson, they quit because they weren't happy with it, so they thought it was too soft. So the previously loyal people like Jacob Rees-Mogg suddenly became the rebels. The people who previously opposed a hard Brexit then became the loyalists, the Remainers on that side. Jacob Rees-Mogg then tabled amendments to the customs bill, which the government was going to oppose, and they changed their mind and they then accepted it. So the people who were going to vote in line with what had been government policy yesterday morning then became the rebels. So you had this strange situation of Gito Bev, the Defence Minister, resigning so that he could vote for what only a few hours earlier had been government policy. It's completely mad.
Splits within splits within splits within the Tory party. Nadine Dorries, have you ever known it like this?
Not quite as it is at the moment, obviously, but then people who were here during Maastricht tell me that it was slightly worse during Maastricht. That we
really worse than this?
We haven't actually got to the full nuclear, everybody, you know, not getting on terribly well point yet. But, you know, there are, I think, some very serious realisations took place yesterday, which made what happened inevitable. And it was basically the weekend and what happened to MPs and their constituencies over the weekend, the emails we've received, the opinions that have been given to us from people and what they thought about the Chequers deal. And I think it became crystal clear yesterday that neither the country nor our Conservative associations, nor many associations across the UK thought the Chequers deal was a good deal, and there was real and palpable anger. And for those in the SW1 bubble, you may not have felt it, but I can tell you, for those of us who went back to our constituencies over the weekend, it was raw. And I think the Prime Minister and those who negotiated the Chequers deal felt it too. And therefore something seismic was going to happen yesterday, and there was going to be this kind of clash that took place in the Commons, because nothing else could have happened, because people voted to leave and the Chequers deal did not deliver that, and people out there let us know it in no uncertain terms.
Do they still trust Theresa May, the people in your constituency?
Well, you know, so I was at a number of functions over the weekend, and I have said all along, and I still say it, you can trust the Prime Minister. She will deliver. And what I got very much in terms of a backlash, and I'm still getting this morning on email, is you've said in your newspaper column, you've said at functions that you've attended, you've said everywhere, we can trust the government to deliver this, and they haven't, and we can't trust you now either. And I got a lot of that from people, and I'm sure other MPs were getting it too.
So is Theresa May still the right...
My association is not unique.
Right, but is Theresa May still the right person to lead the party?
Well, Theresa has been through a very difficult week. I think there are some fundamental problems which have also... This is never... I mean, Matt knows this. It is never one simple answer or one simple problem. It is a whole... it's a group of circumstances that have all come together at an unfortunate moment. I don't believe she has the right advisers around her. She is advised by a Remain establishment. Some of that Remain establishment are absolute arch Remainers, and they have walked her last week into some very dangerous waters that could have resulted this week in a call of 48 letters going in to ask for the Prime Minister to resign. And I have no doubt some of those letters have gone in, but I think by accepting the 4 amendments yesterday, I think she has saved her own skin, basically. And what she's done is...
Do you think she was in danger then of going? Do you think she was in danger of facing a revolt by people like you?
I think she came very close to a very difficult situation.
But do you trust her now? I mean, after what's happened, do you still trust her? Is she the right person to lead the Brexit negotiations? Or is it a case, as Jacob Rees-Mogg of saying, she was a Remainer and she still is a Remainer?
You know, she's the Prime Minister of the country, and she cannot deny or not deliver what the country told her they wanted in that referendum.
Isn't the problem, Nadine, that everybody's got a different idea of what that means? And what she tried to do with Chequers was come up with something that would unite the Tory party. I mean, it clearly didn't work. And there's an argument it was partly to do with management.
Matt, it was never going to unite the Tory party. Nobody could have looked at that deal, which still kept us linked in a customs union, which didn't have reciprocal arrangements.
She said nothing's changed and she can still deliver on Brexit with that Chequers proposal.
She can't. Well, that Chequers agreement doesn't exist anymore. After those 4 amendments being accepted yesterday, with the no Irish border, the reciprocal arrangements for tariff collecting, and the VAT. I mean, the Chequers deal, but no way was anybody on even the softest Brexiteer side of the argument going to accept the EU telling us what goods we could and could not charge VAT on.
So was she
never going
so has
to
she been
last.
duplicitous then?
No, she hasn't been duplicitous. The Prime Minister, I believe, tries her very best to keep everybody happy, but what is happening is she is being advised by the wrong people, and that needs to change very soon.
Pfizer?
Look, this is just very, very poor leadership. Waiting to the last minute to make that kind of decision, which you knew wouldn't have the backing of Brexiteers, that would cause all these sorts of problems that we've seen in the last week and a half. I mean, the chaos that has been brought on this government, I mean, just reviewing the last year, what an epic wasted year we've had of government. I mean, forget Brexit. I mean, Brexit on its own, we've just been going round in circles, and here we are again this week doing that. I mean, to the extent that they want to end Parliament early to avoid Theresa May getting these letters.
You are aware that many Labour constituencies, I'm talking about the whole of Lancashire and the whole of Yorkshire, were vote leave constituencies.
This isn't the point. The point is that the government in charge hasn't done the job that it was given. And actually, Theresa May always knew that the Tory party, or the Conservative Party, was split on this. She should have been clear about her red lines weren't going to work. It was obvious from the EU that they weren't going to accept that. She should have started having this conversation some time ago. This is about diplomacy within your own party. It's just very, very poor leadership.
Well, I think, I'm not so sure it's poor leadership. It's poor, again, a number of circumstances.
But she's the Prime Minister and she should be leading, and she may have Remain advisers, as you put it, but if she truly believed in delivering Brexit in the way you and others see it, then strong leadership would be able to convince you in your constituency association.
Jo, I can't disagree with you, but what I can say is this, that I think the weekend was a watershed moment. You saw the anger from the Remainers yesterday, who had been led to believe, in order to try and pacify their bullying behaviour over the last few months, they'd been led into the sunlight, shown that she could try and help them and agree with them to some degree. They have now realised that actually neither the country nor the party nor the EU nor virtually any Conservative MP are with them.
Could someone do a better job than Theresa May with this
situation? Well, it's hard to see who.
Is there anybody in your mind, a Brexit former cabinet minister, who could lead these negotiations?
There's only one person who can continue with these negotiations at the moment, and that is the Prime Minister. And I admit, like everybody else, I've had my wobbles over the last few days. But I think that she showed absolute common sense yesterday by accepting these 4 amendments. She herself accepted, I know it is unpalatable and impossible for people to accept the EU setting of VAT once we have left.
All right,
she has come to that position, and therefore I think she needs to continue going. And we do need, Parliament does need to go into recess.
Well,
because everyone needs
the accusations of running away to the
what is going on at the moment.
Let's have a listen to one of those Tory Remain MPs whom you say displayed.
So rude yesterday, completely altered the tone of the chamber, completely out of order.
Let's listen to her, Anna Soubry.
It was Margaret Thatcher that championed free trade as a proud Conservative.
I knew Margaret Thatcher. I worked for Margaret Thatcher. My honourable friend ain't no Margaret Thatcher.
Pathetic. Is that the best you can do?
Good addition to the...
If we do not deliver frictionless trade, either by a customs union or indeed by some magical third way that the Prime Minister thinks she can deliver on, and good luck to her on that, if we do not do that, thousands of jobs will go. And honourable members sitting on these benches in private conversations know that to be the case. And what they have said in those private conversations is the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs will be worth it to regain our country's sovereignty. You tell that to the people of my constituency. You tell that to the people who voted leave in my my constituency. Nobody voted to be poorer, and nobody voted Leave on the basis that somebody with a gold-plated pension and inherited wealth would take their job away from them.
Your reaction, Nadine?
I think, well, the comments I've heard from people watching that were that it's no longer anger, they just lost the plot. It's not anger, it's something visceral and different. It's irrational. You know, pointing the finger at people with inherited wealth and gold-plated pensions. Anna Soubry's a wealthy woman. Who was she talking about? Most of the people who voted Leave are not wealthy people.
What about?
They don't have.
About Jacob Rees-Mogg and other people on the Tory.
She was talking about David Davis. And she was talking about. She was pointing fingers at lots of people.
Yeah,
it was an irrational speech. It was one of the worst moments.
We have had irrational speeches from Brexiteers as well.
No. That I would like you to point to them. That is one of the worst. Jacob Rees-Mogg is never anything if he is not absolutely polite.
But was she not provoked by Edward Lee?
I think that was one of the worst moments that we have ever seen or witnessed in the chamber. I've been there for 13 years and I haven't seen as many people groan, or one person came out in the tea room and said, who's a Remainer, I feel sick sat in there watching that. It lets us down. It lets those of us on the Remain side down.
Yeah, I mean, it does let us down. It lets us down that these are the type of petty arguments and conversations that are happening. Like you're not like Margaret Thatcher. I mean, who cares? I think actually, I'm not one to defend Anna Soubry, but I mean, her wider point about people making these decisions, not feeling the consequences, is an important one to consider. There are people that are so ideologically wedded to Brexit and to leaving the EU that they're not thinking about compromise. They're not thinking about jobs and livelihoods.
Of course we've thought about compromise. Of course.
Well,
do you think if we weren't thinking
there's
about
obviously
compromise,
people getting in the way
we
of
would have stopped at those 4 amendments yesterday? Do you think if we weren't thinking about compromise, we wouldn't have gone further? What we are trying to do is to simply deliver what the people voted for,
yeah, but that's
which is
very
to leave
unclear what people
the
wanted.
EU. It isn't unclear. It really isn't. And you do the vast amount of people a very, very insulting injustice.
No, I mean,
they knew exactly what they were voting for. They were voting to leave the single market, leave the customs union, and to leave the EU. It's very simple. And I think when you make those comments, you're really insulting 17.4 million people who went to the polls.
You're now doing what Anna was doing from the other side. Instead of having an argument about the actual practicalities, it all just becomes you're insulting. I spoke to, and I know I don't doubt at all that you've had people say to you they weren't happy with the deal. Yesterday I spoke to literally dozens of Tory MPs, from Cabinet to backbench, Leave and Remain, some in Leavers who are from Remain areas and vice versa. The overwhelming sense that came across is what a total mess it is, that everyone has a different view of what it's supposed to be, and nobody sees a way through this. And I totally get that you much prefer the plan that came through yesterday, but half of your party doesn't. And how does the Prime Minister get through to a position where Parliament ends up voting for something?
Well, I think, Matt, the universal truth is that the Chequers Agreement, when it had gone to the EU, would not have been accepted by the EU.
You're not going to accept what you voted on last night.
Well, then we moved towards a position, and I have to say that I originally and initially was not a no-deal person, but I think we're being driven both by the EU and by the ideological arguments towards a no-deal position, which means we will be in the rule book, not the common rule book, but the rule book of the WTO, which, by the way, the EU is a member of, which is an established framework within which to trade. And the point that Anna Soubry made in that speech yesterday about frictionless trade, of course frictionless trade can exist. It exists all over the world, across many boundaries and across many borders. Of course it can exist. So some of these false arguments really need to be put to bed.
Well, let's have a look at this tweet from Nicholas Soames. He's a veteran Conservative MP, because he underlines the fact that there is sort of open warfare within the Tory party. And he says, I don't think in my 35 years as an MP that I've ever known such a truly unpleasant and deeply uncertain time in the House. So very difficult, hashtag so very difficult to see a way ahead. Sorry to whinge, but it's true. Do you agree?
Well, actually, I love Darling Nick, and I spoke to him about this yesterday. Well, I spoke to him a number of times yesterday, and to other MPs who were there during Maastricht, and they said, but remember, Joey Maastricht, this is why I said to you at the beginning.
But he would have been there.
Well, yes, but this is why I said to you at the beginning of the programme, we haven't quite got to the most unpleasant stage yet, because Joey Maastricht, MPs would apparently walk into the tea room and other MPs would get up and walk out. And when he was in the tea room yesterday, we haven't quite got to that point yet. Nobody's walking out. I think it can get worse.
Right, but in what way? I mean, how much worse could it get?
Well, from what I've heard from MPs who've been there as long as
But what would that mean practically?
It was much worse. I'm sure there are journalists who were around at the time who can tell you it was much worse.
The end of Theresa May?
Literally, Conservative MPs not walking down the same corridors together, not sitting in the same tea room together, you know, literally.
And
and I don't want it to get there.
That led to the Tories being out of power for 13 years.
Exactly, exactly.
The
we
ideological
know that.
But I'm not sure that a lot of your colleagues do. The ideological arguments seem to be causing so much damage.
You are
to
so
the
true,
party.
because I've had this conversation this morning. Some of the new MPs don't know what it's like to suffer a loss. They don't. I was working in Parliament at the time, I wasn't an MP, but they don't know what it's like to be in opposition.
All right, well,
it's not a pleasant place to be.
Let's talk to Jonathan Giannogli. He's in Central Lobby. He is a Remain supporting Conservative MP. Nadine Dorries here in the studio has been complaining about Anna Soubry's interventions in the Commons yesterday, said it was irrational. She's lost the plot, and so have the people supporting her. That would include you, Jonathan.
No, I didn't say Jonathan. I didn't say the people. I said Anna Soubry.
Can I firstly just say
Hello,
that hi, hello Nadine. I wouldn't call myself a Remain MP. I'm a soft Brexiteer, and there's a big difference between that. I accept the result of the referendum. And by the way, I fully support and am promoting the government's white paper. I think it's the way to go. The fact is that people did, as a majority of them voted to leave the EU, but they didn't vote for what they wanted after that. That's the important point to make. And I would say, certainly in my own constituency, the vast majority of people, even if they did vote leave, they want to have a close business and trading relationship with the EU. So to start with, that discounts a hard Brexit. So I think we need to create that differentiation. And also in terms of walking around the House of Commons, I haven't yet sat down next to anyone either who I don't want to sit down next to or they've moved off from me.
Exactly.
As of last Friday, I had the grand total of 5 letters come into my constituency office from members and local constituents.
Right.
I don't think this is I don't think people are worrying about this when they wake up for breakfast.
Right. What did you do yesterday, though, in terms of voting? Did you back the government's amendments or the amendments that the government supported to the bill?
Well, I did not back the ERG amendments, or rather 2 of them.
Which the government supported?
Well, the government supported, yes, they did, and to that extent I did rebel, but they were ERG amendments. Look, firstly, they don't work legally. I think everyone now admits that, so they're going to have to be changed at some point, even if you support the context of them. Secondly, they went against the policy position of the government in the White Paper. And thirdly, they set up more red lines, a time when we've got 3 months to negotiate this deal. We need to just get on with it and get there and negotiate.
So
it's not the time for more red lines.
So did the government capitulate to the Brexit MPs, the ERG?
Yes, they were threatened that if they did not accept these amendments, then the ERG would vote against the bill as a whole, which I think was ridiculous.
So they were threatened.
And on that basis, the government capitulated, wrongly in my view.
Right, well, let Nadine respond.
Sorry, Jonathan, now I was at the meeting where the strategy was decided, and it was never even, we decided we would always vote for the 3rd reading. We would never vote against the bill as a whole. We just wouldn't do that. And although we did, those amendments were discussed at length with the Chief Whip and with others, and decided that they would be accepted by the government into government. But there was no threat. But there is one, again, another universal truth, Jonathan. There are about 60 of us in the ERG. There are, this story that, Anna Soubry and others, this small, hard group, but it's not a small group. There are 60 of us. And at the end of the day, votes in the Commons are always about one thing, and it's numbers. And we have the numbers.
Jonathan?
They had the numbers to wreck the bill.
They never have wrecked the bill.
They don't have the numbers to create a deal. You see, the problem is that the default position here is that we fall off a cliff, because in March next year, if we don't have a deal, we just go onto WTO rules. So from a hard Brexiteer perspective, the maximum disruption you can cause to stop a deal basically helps them, because they are looking for a negative. Whereas those of us that support the White Paper, that support the Prime Minister, that want a deal, in some ways have got a harder case. We have to make the case, because we have to positively get that through the House of Commons. But I would say that push comes to shove, there is not a majority in the House of Commons for a hard Brexit. And I do believe we will come to a deal.
So what do you say about Theresa May's leadership then, that she capitulated? You said that she capitulated to this group of Brexit supporting MPs. What does it say about her leadership?
I think the government looked at it with a very sort of hard eye yesterday and thought, well, we can give way on, only 2 of the amendments are actually contentious. We can give way on those and we can sort them out later on. What we don't want to do is to lose our bill, and then everyone goes away over the recess and things will calm down and it will all be fine. I see where they're coming from, but just because they were going to be bullied didn't mean that all of us wanted to be bullied.
Right. Is the Chequers deal dead, do you think?
Not at all, quite the opposite. I think in some ways the Prime Minister's in a stronger position after getting these 2 bills through than she was before. And she has a summer with MPs away to make her case, to have time to regain the initiative on the policy front. And by the way, the vast majority of Tory MPs support the White Paper and want her to succeed, as do I.
Right, but I mean, as Nadine said, I mean, they've got the numbers. They're holding sway. You said they threatened to rebel, and the Prime Minister backed them. You've been outmanoeuvred and your side's lost.
Well, if you think that 2 small amendments dealing with 2 issues that the government themselves are saying will be changed before we get through to the final deal, and of course it will be dependent on the final deal because...
Well, why was Anna Soubry so angry yesterday then? If it's so little and so inconsequential, why was she so angry?
Anna Soubry, to my mind, was not attacking the ERG. She was standing up for what she believed in terms of, she was standing up in support of the White Paper. Look, for people like myself, Anna and others, I would like to see a customs arrangement and this country joining the EEA, but that is not on the table. There are lots of different positions here. What we have to do is to find a joint position that we can all support, and the Prime Minister has sweated long and hard to get that joint position.
Right.
And I'm afraid we have to support it.
Right. What about this evening or this afternoon? You're going to try a counter move by rebelling against the government's plans and putting forward an amendment on the customs union.
I've actually tabled 8 amendments to deal with the Henry VIII provisions that are in this bill, and I'm very pleased to say that the government has just tabled counter amendments. That means that they've listened and we've had a fair discussion. There is a further question as to what happens with the customs arrangements. Look, the vast majority of Tory MPs support the White Paper, and to that extent that is the position, not joining a customs union. There will be no support for that. The further question is what happens if, for whatever reason, either internally, externally, the EU, the White Paper fails. And in that situation, I'll be quite upfront and say I would want to have a customs union rather than falling off a cliff and seeing jobs go.
Right, well, isn't that the choice then? I mean, in the end, Jonathan may be pushed into supporting the UK remaining in a customs union with the EU.
I think most people realise, and Jonathan will know this too, his constituents do not want a or the customs union to be joined when we leave the EU. It's just that they don't want that. I think what we need to do is to see what the government's plans are and what they're working on, Jonathan, over the summer in terms of preparation for a no deal. We need to see what that looks like. I don't have any fear of joy. Our trade with the EU has gone down by 11% over the last 10 years. I have no fear. This no deal is just with the EU, not with the rest of the world. I have no fear or worry about trading with the rest of the world on WTO rules or trading with the EU. There is no way on this planet they are going to stop trading with us because we don't have a...
But then who's going to win this evening? If there are amendments to the government's plan on the customs union and related issues, will it be you or will it be Jonathan?
I haven't even seen Jonathan's amendments. They could be quite reasonable. I'm very happy to read them and to see them.
Yeah.
Jonathan, that assumption you've made that we were holding the government at their feet to the fire, to ransom, that we were going to vote against the bill, that it was a wrecking amendment. Please understand that it wasn't, that not one person in the ERG, there was unanimous support that we would not wreck the bill and that we would vote for the bill at third reading. There is no way the ERG members want to wreck the bill.
Jonathan?
It's untrue.
The clear understanding that we were given from the government yesterday was that the ERG were holding the government's feet to the fire.
Well,
Look, and by the way, this evening, I will hear the debate. As I said, I support the government's position on the White Paper, and therefore I would not support a vote tonight on whether we join a customs union at this stage. The question is whether, if the White Paper fails, we would then go to a customs union approach. and I would support that, yes.
Can Brexit really be sorted out in Parliament, Nadine and Jonathan? I mean, listening to the former Education Secretary yesterday, Justine Greening, who says that there just isn't a way through when you listen to all the different sides of the argument, that in the end, Parliament will not be able to come to an agreement, whether it's on the Chequers proposal or not, and the only way forward is to go back to the people. Jonathan?
Look, I sit on the Brexit Select Committee where there are views of every variety, and I would say yes, absolutely. There is a deal to be had. There is a position where we will, retain the jobs, keep businesses working, not having lorries piled up at the border and businesses having to pay EU tariffs and loads more red tape. There definitely is a way forward, and we must be positive about this. And the white paper represents the best alternative we have for that at the moment. And,
all right. Jonathan, thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to get some reaction from Pfizer, listening to that, because there were Labour Leave MPs who sided with the government in the end, which meant that they were able to win on those crucial votes last night, whereas they could have inflicted defeat. Yeah, that's unfortunate that that handful are not people that I wanted to talk directly about. I think there's the bigger issue here. I mean, listening to this sort of infighting, polite infighting that was just happening. I mean, why would Theresa May have accepted those amendments if she didn't think that her
debate? It wasn't infighting.
It is infighting. It's all infighting.
There are lots of MPs in your own party. You would have similar discussions on here every day. It's not infighting. It's debate.
I'm thinking. So I mean, if you say so, it's not how it looks like to the world. I mean, look, it's very, very public now. Theresa May clearly is worried about her own position. That's why we're seeing this weird switching of whose amendments, who are the rebels. That leaves us in limbo. This government has been so incompetent. So, when you talk about another referendum, is it another referendum? Because it just seems to me that this government just isn't up for the task. How have they wasted the last 2 years? And people that have wanted Brexit for decades haven't been able to put through a clear plan.
Or is there a plan? Is Theresa May in charge of some sort of plan by keeping all the different warring factions, and it has broken out into open warfare, whatever Nadine says, actually going to keep it together?
I have yet to see any evidence that Theresa May is the sort of person who's got a cunning plan up her sleeve. I do think one of the problems is that after the election last year, when she lost a majority, they got sighted into this mindset of just getting to the end of each day. So yesterday was about getting to the end of the day without losing out to the ERG. Today it might be without losing out to Jonathan's amendments, whatever it is. The idea of where we're going to be in 6 months, it's amazing that she's still negotiating with the people who are supposed to be on her side. We haven't even got to Brussels yet.
Right.
To negotiate
and that's
any of
a fair
this.
point. And do you know how this could all be ended? This could all stop. Would be if Brussels were slightly more reasonable. Because, we could reach that soft Brexit that Jonathan was talking about if there was the remotest possibility that as time went on and the situation developed, that there could be divergence from the EU.
Annoyed Brussels so much up till now, maybe there could have been a different conversation. But
we've annoyed Juncker and Barnier, and we've annoyed those people.
I mean,
I think they've annoyed the British public.
Yeah, of course, it goes both ways. But at the same time, when Boris is calling them names and saying they can go whistle and all kinds of rubbish, I mean, that's really bad diplomacy. You guys have played this so badly, and now we're in a situation where it's right. We do have to think about
Well, let's hear from another voice, and in fact, it was a voice that was missing in some part last night in the debate and caused that vote to be even more of a knife edge. That's Vince Cable and Tim Farron. They weren't there for the Liberal Democrats. People were asking where they were, anti-Brexit MPs, senior anti-Brexit MPs, but we have managed to find the Brexit spokesman, Tom Brake, and he is in Central Lobby. So where was your leader last night?
Well, my leader, as was the case with many members of Parliament for other parties, didn't know at the time how close the vote was going to be. The critical thing is that today we do know that the votes are going to be very close and all the Liberal Democrats are here.
Right, but that's hopeless saying that today. I mean, yesterday was a crucial vote. You are supposed to be the party that is championing the anti-Brexit voice, and neither your leader nor your former leader were anywhere close to Parliament. And as it so happens, that vote was literally a matter of 2 or 3 votes either side. You could have made the difference.
Well, no, we couldn't. The votes were won by the government, won by 3 votes. So had Vince and Tim been there, actually the government would still have carried the day. Whereas, of course, if the 4 Labour MPs who went through voting with the government had voted the other way or hadn't voted at all, then the government would have been defeated.
So does it not matter about Liberal Democrats anymore then? Is there no point to the Liberal Democrats in this debate?
No, the Liberal Democrats and I have led the charge for the last 2 years in terms of securing a final say on the deal and exit from Brexit. We will continue to do that. We are all here today, and no one could have anticipated what was going to happen yesterday. During the course of the day, the position of both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party on the issue of the ERG votes changed almost on an hourly basis. So by the time we had some clarity, particularly in relation to what Labour were going to do, it was too late to bring people back. But we're all here today, and we have the potential to defeat the government today, and I hope we will do that, and the Liberal Democrats will be there to support that if that is possible.
Matt?
Tom, for some time, the Lib Dems have been really struggling to cut through on your pro-Remain argument. To me, it's extraordinary. We knew about Jacob Rees-Mogg's amendments last week. It seems extraordinary to me that there was a Brexit bill in the House of Commons, and the leader of the so-called movement for Remain wasn't in the House. I knew it was going to be tight. And because all these votes on Brexit always are. Well, it is extraordinary your leader wasn't there.
If you knew it was going to be tight, then you must have inroads into both the Tory and the Labour whip's offices, because it was something that was changing on an hourly basis. Initially, the ERG votes were the government weren't going to support them. Then the government changed their mind. The Labour Party had said they were going to abstain. Then the Labour Party changed their mind and said they were going to vote against them. So in those circumstances, it's difficult to plot. But we do know that today those votes could be very, very close, and all 12 Liberal Democrats are here, and we will be voting to ensure that there is the best possible chance of securing a final say on the deal, and the best possible chance of securing, if we can't do that and stop Brexit, at least as soft as Brexit as possible.
I mean, come on, Lib Dem's main platform has been to stop Brexit. And here we are saying that it wasn't clear if it was going to be closed, trying to blame the Labour Party. People can see this for what it is. They should have been there. They should have been there to vote. And if this is their main reason to be there, then how is it that they're just not there during the week that they know the Brexit bill is going to be passed? There's just no excuses for this. You've let down people.
Tom, do you regret it?
Yes, it was a mistake on our part, but I think people are talking with a degree of hindsight. It was not clear at any point yesterday until very close to the vote what was going to happen, where the different parties were positioned. Very clear what we're doing today. We're all here, and if there's a chance to defeat the government, we will be there. We will continue to campaign for a final say on the deal and a chance to exit from Brexit.
There'll be many people just say that is too late, Tom Brake. I mean, Matt, can you give any advice to Tom in terms of timings and how close it's going to be today so that there isn't a similar mistake?
I think as a general rule, if Brexit is being debated in the House of Commons, it's worth the Lib Dems hanging around. I just think that people looking, I think any normal person looking into how politics is playing out at the moment will be dismayed by all of the parties. But for a party that's struggling to have cut through on this issue, for the party leader not to be there when a Brexit bill being debated is more than just a mistake. It is a total... I was going to swear there, but I won't swear. But I just think, from your point of view, it is beyond embarrassing that Vince wasn't there last night.
All right.
Thank you. You've given me a chance to say again that we're campaigning for a final say on the deal and a chance to exit from Brexit.
All right. And on that, I'm afraid we're going to let you exit from our camera at Central Lobby. Tom Brake, thank you. We're going to catch up with the BBC's senior political analyst, Peter Barnes. Because, Peter, there is some consternation as to whether these amendments that were proposed and then backed by the government are consistent with the Chequers proposal and plan as laid out by Theresa May.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Nadine Dorries say that she thought that the Chequers plan had been massively improved as a result of these amendments that were passed yesterday.
I'm wrong now.
But the government actually doesn't think that the amendments that were passed yesterday make that much of a change to what their plan is. This is the white paper that you've been talking about, the Chequers plan, what the government wants to negotiate with Europe. And on probably what was the crucial amendment yesterday was about this issue of the facilitated customs arrangement. I'm sorry, you'll have to bear with me, it's really complicated. But part of this plan is that the government wants to have a system where the UK collects EU tariffs on goods that come into the UK but are destined for the EU. So this white paper sets out that plan, but it said in it that the UK was not proposing that the EU applies the UK's tariffs and trade policy at its borders. So this caused a bit of a row because it looked as though the UK was going to offer the EU something, but we weren't going to ask for the EU to be offering the same back. Now, one of the amendments yesterday, the one put forward by Priti Patel, that argued that it should only be allowed for us to collect somebody else's tariffs if the policy is reciprocal. That's to say, if we do one thing, that they should do it back for us as well. Now, that amendment was passed, the government accepted it, but they're arguing now that it doesn't actually really affect their policy because they're pointing to another bit in the same paragraph which says that the UK's plan is also that we should agree a mechanism for the remittance of relevant tariff revenue with the EU. So that would mean that there was money going from the UK to the EU and money coming back from the EU to the UK. They say that is enough for reciprocity. But I don't think that's really how most people in the House of Commons understood it.
Right, what about you, Nadine?
Well, we didn't understand it that way for one very simple reason. We know how difficult the EU have been, and there is no way that the EU would have met that obligation. What we wanted to do was actually enshrine in the White Paper, in our own agreement going forward for October, that there would be this reciprocal arrangement, because we don't trust the EU to honour that part, because the language is so vague. It should be more explicit, and what we want to do is make it absolutely explicit that there would be this. I'm trying to struggle for the word reciprocity.
Yeah. Yes, reciprocity. Yes, reciprocity. Make it reciprocal.
We wanted it there, voted on, and decided by Parliament that arranged so they couldn't wiggle out of it.
Right. So, Peter, does the amendment do what Nadine thinks it does?
Well,
yes.
Not according to the government.
According to the OG, it does.
The government doesn't think that it has to offer this deal where the government doesn't think it has to insist that the EU will collect UK tariff at all the entry points into the EU. They think this mechanism for the remittance of relevant tariff revenue will be enough to meet the reciprocity condition. So I think there is still a bit of a row to be had here.
Right. We've taken QC advice on it, and it isn't. So,
wrecking amendment or not?
Everything's a wrecking amendment these days. I think and it just goes to show things are so tight in terms of numbers. The government's majority is so slender. You've got, people who previously were in the government who are now, all the dozen of them have resigned for one reason or another. They're all essentially now rebels. It depends on what the Labour Party does, how many of the Labour leavers turn up to vote, and, who knows, some of the Lib Dems might turn up.
Peter, thank you for taking us through that. I'm glad it was you and not me. Now, what about, talking of maybe madness and entering politics in general, is that the reason that the government now wants to shut up shop early and send MPs on their way on Thursday rather than next Tuesday?
This goes back to when I was saying, has Theresa May got a big plan up her sleeve? Is there smart cookies in number 10 who can spot unexploded bombs about to go off? This is about, with a lot of competition, about the daftest idea that they could have dreamt up, that they would, instead of staying until Tuesday, finish on Thursday. I know from personal, I've had a text my wife this morning to say it's all that people in her office are talking about is MPs bunking off a couple of days early, having not sorted out the trouble with Brexit.
Well, and Nick Bowles, Tory MP, does seem to have sort of cottoned on that it might not be a good idea, and he has tweeted there could hardly be a worse time for Parliament to vote to start recess early. The government is wrong to propose it, and I urge MPs of all parties and convictions to oppose the motion later today. Are you voting for it or against?
I'll vote on this, whichever way the whips tell me to be honest, because we've normally gone by now. Parliament's actually sitting quite late into the summer.
It looks absolutely
I'll probably vote against.
Terrible.
Yeah,
but
I think the reason
not sure.
I think the reason why this vote is happening is because a lot of MPs, and I think on both sides of the House, have asked for it to happen. I don't think the government have initiated this. I think they've been asked to do it.
And I think Labour have been quite clever. They suggested previously they would support it, and now today they've said they.
And I think there's some kind of cross-party debate.
So again, the government's being led.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a joke again to just repeat the point. This year, this government has achieved nothing. In fact, they've regressed. They've regressed.
So maybe a good idea to go off early then.
No, they've got
in lots of ways.
No way. I mean, look, even on Brexit, we've just gone round in circles. But all of the other domestic issues, from housing to food banks.
I mean, it's
not true. It's been so awful.
Let's go.
Yeah, I do. Let's Commons legislation passed this year.
I'm going to break through. Let's go to Ellie Price. She's in the newsroom because one of the, I suppose, upsides might be cheap travel deals if you can get away on Thursday. Ellie, tell us.
That's right, Joe. I mean, far be it for there being any cynical reasons why the politicians might want to get away. I've been having a quick look, and actually you can get from London to Zante, the party Greek islands, the Kinthos, also known about that as well. And I have been doing a bit of looking. I'm kind of wondering whether the government might be booking into the ship-faced booze cruise. I don't know whether that's their sort of thing. Maybe Theresa May's sort of thing. I don't know. Otherwise, you've got Hotel Catalonia, Las Vegas. It's not in Catalonia. It's not in Las Vegas. It's in Tenerife. But you can get a good deal, £477 per person for a week. Closer to home, everybody knows you can get a cheap spa deal if you go in the week, 40% off. And very quickly, Joe, we know Theresa May likes Wales. She likes her walking. Had a quick look, and there is a National Trust property. Now, I've taken advice on this, but I might get the pronunciation wrong. Llanelleron.
Right, well done.
Which on Thursday and Friday does have a power guided tour, Petticoats of Power guided tour, only on Thursday and Friday this week. Obviously, if they don't go on recess this week, they're going to miss it.
Right, OK, so what are we going to book on? What do you fancy? Nadine, you said yes to Zante, to the Greek islands.
No, I'll go on it. Was it ship-faced?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go on that one.
You'll go on that one.
I'll go for laugh.
I just want to tell you that actually they may be for turning, after all, on this, the government. The Prime Minister's official spokesman has refused to say whether the government is planning to withdraw a motion calling for Parliament's summer recess to start early. What do you think? Do you think it's going to be withdrawn?
It's so unlike this government to not even be able to decide when it's going to go on holiday.
No.
What a pickle.
Or so like the Labour whips to pull a fast one. I mean, it's not just Conservatives who wanted it, Labour wanted it as well. And it's a nice little trap we walked into, isn't it?
Right, well, we're ending this
dirty
programme as we started here. Splits every which way, and the government deciding to do something completely different from what it set out to do. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you to all my guests. We'll be booking our travel plans in just about 5 minutes.